Boker Tov. I think we may be meeting is now streaming live. Are we now streaming live, Samara?
We are.
Excellent. And make host. Samara, you are now our host for this morning.
Ooh.
Okay, you've got all the power and I'm just working here. Shabbat Shalom to everyone who is joining us here this morning. Give me just a moment. And I'm just working here. Oh, I'm hearing myself in. There we go. That's better. Okay. Boker Tov, Shabbat Shalom to everyone. I am opening my Siddur, but actually we don't need it quite yet because we're going to start with the Nigun. Tov, Shabbat Shalom. It's nice to see some of you and know that some others of you are on Facebook. Good morning, Spivax, and and good morning, Judy. Shabbat Shalom, Judy, and you'll let me know. Okay, so we are going to begin this morning. I will take off my guitar with. After that lovely nigun, which I really like and helps me wake up in the morning, Birchot HaShachar, our morning blessings. We're on page 103, and if you can rise, please do so. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lasach vivina leavchin ben yom uvein laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani b'tzalmo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani bat chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, malbish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, zokeh kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, rokah haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamechin mitzadei gaber. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asa li kol tzorki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Ozer Yisrael bigvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Oter Yisrael betifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Hanotein layaef koach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Hama'avir she'ena me'enaynu ma'me'afapai. Utneinu hayom v'chol yom, l'cheinu l'chesed l'rachamim b'einecha, u'v'einei choroeinu v'tigmaleinu chasadim tovim, Baruch atah Adonai, gomel chasadim tovim, li'amo Yisrael. You may be seated as we turn to page 112 for the Psalm for Shabbat. Hayom Yom Shabbat Kodesh Shebo Hayu Haleviim Omrim Beit HaMikdash Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat Tov Lo Dov Lo Zamir L'Shimcha Elyon Nagib B'Boker Chesdecha V'Emunatcha B'Leilot V'Yasor. Oh, Dinuvun b'seva d'shenim v'rananim yiyu le'agid ki ashar Adonai tzuri v'lo avlat habo. Page 120. I believe that is correct. Yes, it is for Psalm 30. Mizmor Shir Chanukat Habayit LeDavid. Mizmor Shir Chanukat Habayit LeDavid. Aromim Charonai Kidu V'Tani V'Lo Simach Boi V'Alim. Amrulani Chasid Avodo L'Zecher Kodsho. Elecha Adonai ekra v'el Adonai etchanan. Elecha Adonai ekra v'el Adonai etchanan. Shema Adonai v'choneni Adonai Shema Adonai v'choneni Adonai ozer li. Ha'afachta misbiri l'macholi bitachta saki v'tazreini simcha למען יזמרך כבוד ולא ידום אדוני אלוהי לעולם עודך. Mourner's Kaddish is on page 121. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah v'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach leolam uleolmei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpo'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitale v'yitalal shemei dekudsha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran v'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. We're now on page 122. Those who can rise, please do so for Baruch She'amar. Baruch she'amar ve'aya olam. Baruch hu. Baruch oseh v'reshit. Baruch omer v'yoseh. Baruch ozer u'kayim. Baruch mirachem al haaretz. Baruch mirachem al habriot. Baruch mishalem sachar tov lireyav. Baruch chai la'ad v'kayam lanetzach. Baruch hodeh u'matzil. Baruch shemo. Lai lai na 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 ya na 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 lai. Lai la lai lai lai. Ya na lai ya na 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 lai. Lai lai ya na 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 lai. Ya na lai ya na 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 lai. Ya na lai ya na lai ya na lai lai. Ya la lai la la lai. Ya la 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 lai. Ya na lai ya na lai ya na 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 lai. Lai lai ya la 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 lai. Ya la lai ya lai lai lai. Ya la lai ya lai la la lai. Lai 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 lai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Shirei David. Yachid chai olamim, melech mishubach umfoar, ad shemo hagadol. Baruch atah Adonai, melech meulal batishpachot. You may be seated, or you may lie down in front of us with a toy like this sweet one I'm looking at right now. Oh, the ceiling. Oh, there. We're now going to turn to page 126. We don't always go to this page, but this page is a collection, or at least this second chunk of this page is a collection of verses from different places. And I love the last verse where the arrow is, and therefore going to sing the last couple of lines here. Va'ani b'chastecha batachti, yageli bi bishuatecha, ashira l'Adonai ki gamal alai. I trust in your love and kindness. My heart rejoices in your deliverance. I sing to Adonai for all that Adonai has done for me. Va'ani b'chastecha batachti, Yageli bi bishuatecha, va'ani bechazdecha batachti. Yageli bi bishuatecha, va'ani bechazdecha batachti. Yageli bi bishuatecha, Va'ani bechazdecha batachti, Yageli bi bishuatecha. Shir al Adonai, Ashir al Adonai, Ashir al Adonai ki gamal alai. Ashir al Adonai, Ashir al Adonai, Ashir al Adonai ki gamal alai. Lai 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 Ashir al Adonai, Ashir al Adonai, Ashir al Adonai ki gamal alai. Ashir al Adonai, Ashir al Adonai, Ashir al Adonai ki gamal alai. And now we turn to page 136 for Ashrei. Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha Od Yalelucha Sela. Ashrei Ha'am Shekacha Lo Ashrim Shadonai Elohav Tehila L'David. Tehilat Adonai daber pi vivarech kol basar shem kodsho liolam va'ed v'anachnu nevarech ya me'atav yad olam Hallelujah 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 nafshi et Adonai Hallelujah b'chayai asamran Eloi be'odi al tituch b'divini. Adonai shomer kerim yatom yamanayot et v'derech rishayim ye'avet yimloch Adonai leolam Eloi tzion ledor ba'dor. Hallelujah. We turn now to page 141 for Psalm 150. Yai na na ya na na ya na 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 ya lai lai la la lai lai nai na na ya na na ya na na nai 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 na na nai lai lai la lai ya la lai la la lai lai ai nai na na nai 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 na na ya na nai na na nai nai ya lai lai la la lai ai 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 nai na na nai ai ya na nai Hallelujah, 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 el behekodsho. Hallelujah, 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 rikia uzo. Hallelujah, 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 big vorotav. Hallelujah, 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 kirabudlo. Hallelujah, beteka shofar. Hallelujah, v'nemel v'chinor. Hallelujah, b'tov u'machol. Hallelujah, b'minim ve'ugav. Hallelujah, hallelujah, b'tziltzele shama. Hallelujah, hallelujah, b'tziltzele trua. Kol anshamate, hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol anshamate, hallelujah, hallelujah. Oh, ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. By the way, that tune, which is the nigun that I started with this morning, and also the one that I did just before, the Ashira Adonai, both of those are tunes by the Israeli from singer Yonatan Razel. We continue in the middle of 141. Baruch Adonai leolam amen ve'amen. Uvaruch shem kvodo leolam v'yimalech kvodot kol haaretz. Amen ve'amen. Page 145. Nishmat kol chai tevarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu v'ruach kol basar tfarei termim zevayim makinu amen. כי כל פה לך יודע, וכל לשון לך תשבע, וכל דרך לך תכרע, וכל קומה לפניך תשתחווה, וכל לבבות יראוך, וכל קרב וכליות יזמרו לשמך, כדבר שכתוב, כל עצמותיי תאמרנה אדוני מחמוך, מציל אני מחזק ממנו, ואני ואביון מגוזלו. מי יתמלך ומי ישמלך ומי יערוך לך? האל הגדול הגיבור ונורא אל עליון קונה שמיים וארץ. נעללך ונשבחך ונפוארך ונברך את שם קודשך. כאמור לדוד ברכי נפשי את אדוני וכל קרבי את שם קודשו. Page 147, we begin at the arrow, Shochenad. Shochenad marom v'kadosh shemo v'chatuv ranenu tzadikim aronai l'shem navatila. ובלשון חסידים תתרומם ובקרב קדושים תתקדש ובמקלות רבבות עמך בית ישראל. שכן חובת כל היצורים לפניך אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואימותינו להודות להלל לשבח לפעל רומם להדר לברך ליעלה ולקלס על כל דברי שירות ותשבחות דוד בן ישי עבדך משיחך ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו אל המלך. ברכות והודאות מעתה ועד עולם ברוך אתה אדוני אל מלך גדול בתשבחות אל ההודאות אדון הנפלאות הבוחר בשירי זמרה מלך מלכי העולמים יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון ובימיכון ובחי לכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לאלה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן ביעלמה ויאמרו Amen. We rise, if you're able, for the Baruch Hu on page 149. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Yotzer or uborei choshech oseh shalom shalom uborei et hakol. Yotzer or uborei choshech oseh shalom shalom uborei et hakol. You may be seated if you're not already. We continue with the fourth line down on page 150. Ha'el, Hakol. Hakol yoducha v'yakol yishabchucha v'yakol yimrun kadosh kadonai yakol yimrun. Ein kerkacha v'ein zulatecha efes piltecha umito melach. Ein kerkacha Adonai Eloheinu ba'olam hazeh v'ein zulatecha malkeinu l'chayei ha'olam haba. אפס פילתך גואלנו לימות המשיח, ואין דומה לך מושיענו לתחיית המתים. אל אדון על כל המעשים, על כל המעשים, ברוך ומבורך, ברוך ומבורך, בפי כל נשמה. אל אדון על כל המעשים, על כל המעשים, ברוך ומבורך, ברוך ומבורך, בפי כל נשמה. גודלו וטובו מלא עולם, דעת ותבונה סובבים אותו. גודלו וטובו מלא עולם, דעת ותבונה סובבים אותו. אלי ללי ינאי נאי נאי ינאי ללי לי לי ללי ינאי ללי ינאי ללי לי לי ללי לי. המתגאה על חיות הקודש ונהדר בכבוד על המרכבה, זכות ומישור לפני חיסו, חסד ורחמים לפני כבודו. אל אדון על כל המעשים, על כל המעשים, ברוך ומבורך, ברוך ומבורך, בפי כל נשמה. טובים יורות שברא אלוהינו, יצרם בדעת בבינה ופסקל, כוח וגבורה נתן בהם, להיות מושלים בקרב תבל. יאללה ללי 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 לי יאללה ללי לי לי ינאי נאי יאללה ללי לי יאללה ללי לי. מלאים זיו ופיקים נוגה, נועז זיוום בכל העולם, שמחים בצאתם וששים בבואם, עושים בהם הרצון קונם. אל אדון על כל המעשים, על כל המעשים, ברוך ומבורך, ברוך ומבורך, בפי כל נשמה. פאר וכבוד נותנים לשמו, צולה ורינה לזכר מלכותו. קרא לשמש וישרח אור, ראה והתקין צורת הלבנה. ללי לני ינאי נאי 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 לי 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 ינאי נאי נאי ינאי נאי 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 נאי. שבח שבח נותנים לו, כל צבא צבא מרום, תפארת וגדולה, שרפים ואופנים וחיות הקודש. אל אדון על כל המעשים, על כל המעשים, ברוך ומבורך, ברוך ומבורך, בפי כל נשמה. Lovely tune by Cantor Ira Bigelaisen. We continue on page 152. לאל אשר שבת מכל המעשים. תתברך מושיענו על שבח מעשה ידיך ועל מאורי אור שעשית, יפארו חסלה. תתברך צורנו מלכנו וגואלנו בורא קדושים. 153. ישתבח שמך למלכנו יוצא משלם. ומרים ומריצים ומקדישים וממליכים את שם האל המלך הגדול הגיבור ונורא הקדוש וכולם מקבלים עליהם עול מלכות שמיים זה מזה ונותנים רשות זה לזה להקדיש ליוצרם בנחת רוח בשפה ברורה ונימה קדושה כולם כאחד עונים ואומרים ביראה קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוא כל הארץ כבודו והאופנים וחיות הקודש ברעש גדול מנסים לעומת צרפים לעומתם משבחים ואומרים ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו לאל ברוך נעימות ייתנו למלך הדקן זמיר תמיד אור חדש על ציון תאיר ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות אהבה רבה אהבתנו אדוני אלוהינו חמלה גדולה We're on 154, soon to be on 155 for the Shema. והערננו בתורתך ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך יחווה ולירא את שמך ולא נבוש לעולם ועד ולא נבוש לעולם ועד כי בשם קודשך הגדול הנורא פתחנו Shalom me'arba kanfot haaretz v'tolichenu komemiyut le'artzenu ki el poel yeshuot ata uvanu v'charta mikolam v'lashon וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול סלע סלע וימת להודות לך ולייחדך באהבה ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך Uvisharecha. We continue with the top paragraph on 156, and we'll come together for the second paragraph for the Vayomer on 156. If you're ready, please join me with the Vayomer on 156. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor daber el bnei Yisrael v'yamarta lehem v'yasu lahem tzitzit al kanfei bigdeihem lidorotam v'natnu al tzitzit hakana petil techelet v'aya lachem letzitzit Uritem oto, uschartem kol mitzvot Adonai, vasitem otam, velo taturu, acharei levavchem, v'acharei einechem, asher atem zonim achareihem, leman tizgeru, vasitem et kol mitzvotai, vitem kedoshim leloechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem Asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem Amen. לדור ודור קיים ושמו קיים וחיסון נכון ומלכותו ואמונתו לעד קיימת. רב חיים וגנים. על הראשונים אל האחרונים דבר דומה קיים לעולם. פודנו מצילנו מעולם שמך אין אלוהים זולתך עזרת אבותינו ואמותינו אתה הוא מעולם מגן ומושיע לבניך. We're going to begin on the 7th line down on page 158 and then go all the way through the rest of the page. And then we'll begin the Amidah together on 159. Asot, asot, shibechu ahuvim, shibechu ahuvim, veromemu, 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 veromemu el, veromemu, 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 veromemu el, venatnu, venatnu yedidim, venatnu, venatnu yedidim, zemirot, shirot, vetishpachot, berachot, vehodaot, lamelech el chai vekayam, ram venisa, gadol venora, mashpil geim, umagbiach shefalim, motzi asirim ufodei anovim, v'ozer dalim, v'on eliyamo, v'on eliyamo, v'yeit shavam elav. Tilo le'el elyon baruch hu umvorach, Moshe u'Miriam u'bnei Yisrael echanu shira, v'simcha rabba v'yamru chulam, mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh nora tehila חדשה שיבחו גאולים לשמך על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ויאמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צור ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל ופתח נאומך יהודה וישראל. גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו קדוש ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב, אלוהי שרה, אלוהי רבקה, אלוהי רחל ואלוהי לאה, האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא, אל העליון, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גואל לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ופוקד ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיים מתים אתה רב והושיע. משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישוע, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב ביד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ויאמר קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוך כל הארץ כבודו. אז בקול רעש גדול אדיר וחזק משמיעים קול מתנשאים לעומת שרפים לעומתם ברוך יאמרו. ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומך מלכנו תופיע ותמלוך עלינו כי מחכים אנחנו לך. מתי תמלוך בציון בקרוב בימינו לעולם ועד תשכון. תתגדל ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים עירך לדור ודור ולנצח נצחים. ועינינו תראינו מלכותך כדבר האמור בשירי עוזך על ידי דוד. משיח צדקך ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהיך ציון לדור ודור. הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו למושלם עולם ועד, כי המלך גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. Yitkana v'yitkana shemei rabba Bi'alma divrach yirutevim lichmachutei b'chayachonu v'yimechonu chay l'chol beit Yisrael ba'agal v'zman kariv imeru Amen Yehi shmei rabba mevorach li'olam u'li'omei omaya yitbarach Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitturma mina sevit adar v'yitalev v'yitalel shmei d'kudisha Brichu li'elam mikol brachata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiran v'yama v'imeru Amen titkabel sloton uvaton d'chol Yisrael kodam avuchon v'shmaya v'imeru Amen yeh shlam rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'kol Yisrael v'imeru Amen ohoseh shalom b'romav hu ya'aseh shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'yimeru. Amen. So we are now going to move to the Torah service, which we find on the very next page, and I turned too many pages, but we're on page 168. We have Peter Reynolds with us this morning, who will be reading 3 aliyot for us from his very own Torah, and he'll tell us about that in a moment. But first, we are going to begin with Ein Kamocha, and then when it's time for Vayihi bin Soah HaAron, Peter will open the Aron that he has for his Torah. Ein kamocha va'elohim Adonai v'ein kema'asecha malchutecha malchut kol olamim umemshaltecha bechol dor v'dor Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed Adonai os li'amo yitain Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom avarachamim Heitiv avirtzonecha et Zion Tivne chomot Yerushalayim Tivne chomot Yerushalayim כי בך לבד בטחנו, מלך רם ונישא, אדון עולמים. ויהי בנשוא אהרון, ויאמר משה, קומה אדוני, ויפוצו אויביך, וינוסו משנאיך מפניך, כי מציון תצא תורה, כי מציון תצא תורה, ודבר אדוני מירושלים, ברוך שנתן תורה תורה, ברוך שנתן תורה תורה, לעמו ישראל בקדושתו. בינרה חץ ולשמי קדישה, קדישה יקירה, אנא אמר תושבחן. בינרה חץ, בינרה חץ ולשמי קדישה, קדישה יקירה, אנא אמר תושבחן. יהי רבה קדמך, דתפתח ליבי באורייתא, ותשלים משאלין דליבי, וליבה דכל עמך ישראל, לטוב ולחיי ולשלום. Amen. Peter, is the Torah already unwrapped? Can you pick it up for Shema? Yes, you were so efficient, right? Sorry. One second. Okay. And here we go. Shema, Peter, are you going to answer me? Peter, how about Peter if you answer? All right, unmute. Okay, here we go. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Gadlul Adonai iti, uneramim Shemo yachtav. You don't have to really walk all over the place if you don't. Oh, there he goes. Lecha Adonai hagedula ve'agivura ve'atiferet ve'anetzach ve'aod. Ki chol b'shamayim u'ba'aretz, ki chol b'shamayim u'ba'aretz. Lecha Adonai hamamlacha, v'yamit na'aseh lechol rosh romimu. Romimu. Adonai Eloheinu, ve'hishtachavu, ve'hishtachavu, lahadom raglav kadoshu. Romimu. Romimu. Adonai Eloheinu, ve'hishtachavu, ve'hishtachavu, lehar kodsho, ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. Okay, now everyone may be seated. We are going to begin our Torah reading today. We are in Parshat Vayechi, which is the last Parsha in the book of Shemot. And as Jerome has written, get ready for Chazak, Chazak, V'nit Chazeking. Yes, that will come at the end of the third Aliyah. We're reading 3 Aliyot today. We're going to be reading the first 3 Aliyot of the second triennial, second part of the triennial, which is what we're in. So we are beginning on page 298 in the Eitz Chaim, if you have it. If you don't have it, you can find it in whatever Chumash you're looking at, chapter 49 of Breshit, verse 1. And in this part of the Parsha, Jacob is nearing his death. And so he calls his sons together and he gives them, his blessing, though they're not all blessings. Let's just put it this way. You know how they say when some people get to be very old, they sort of lose their filter? So this is how I see Jacob at this point. Phil is nodding. Yes. This is how I see Jacob at this point. He is telling it like it is, man. Telling it like he sees it. And, regardless of what you'd like to hear from your father as his parting words before he dies, regardless of that, Jacob is saying what he has on his mind. So we are going to begin with, as I said, chapter 49, verse 1. I'm going to get my other book because I have the verses marked out here. And who is our first Aliyah today? The Spivaks. Okay. Vayazor v'yagen v'yoshia l'chol hachosim bo v'nomar amen. Hakol avukod el Eloheinu tnu kavod laTorah. Ya'amdu. I need your names.
Yaakov ben Fishel v'Chaya Batya.
Yaakov ben Fishel v'Chaya Batya. Ve.
Libashena bat Baruch Hirsch v'Rachel.
Libashena, that's the part I remembered. Bat Baruch Hirsch v'Rachel l'Aliyah Rishona. Baruch Shenatan Torah li'amo Yisrael b'kedushato ve'atem advekim Adonai Elohechem chaim kolechem hayom.
Okay, you ready? Baruch et Adonai Hamborah.
Baruch Adonai Hamborah.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach li'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Hey, you look big.
Amen. Vayikra Yaakov banav vayomer. יאספו ויגיד עליכם את אשר יקראתם באחרית הימים, יקבצו ושמעו בני יעקב ושמעו על ישראל אביכם. ראובן בכורי אתה כוחי וראשית אוני, יתר שאת ויתר אחז כמים התותח כי עלית משכבי אביך. Ahaz chilata yitzui Allah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Now, before we call it the second Aliyah, Peter, could you tell us something about the Torah you're reading from?
I can tell you a little something about the Torah I'm reading from. This Torah, which lives in this beautiful case, was gifted to me way back in the last century by, of blessed memories, Rabbi Aaron M. Wise and Miriam, on the occasion of my bar mitzvah. And I know for certain that we can do a Shechianu, because this is the very first time I have actually done a Kriya Torah from this Torah. And to do it with congregation Adat Ari, and that name, of course, was given to the VJCC by none other than Rabbi Aaron M. Wise of blessed memory. It's really a special occasion, and really honored to be able to take out this Torah once we could find it in our house again, because I hid it really well. And thanks to Kathy, we found it. And here it is, reading from the Torah on this Shabbat. So it's really a very special occasion.
Yasher koach, and thank you very much for that. It is very special.
Well, yeah.
All right, we are now ready for the second aliyah, beginning with verse number 5. And Samar and Eliana, is that you guys?
Eliana's gonna do.
Eliana bat Gershon.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. Tom, Eliana bat Gershom v'Gershom, aliyah hashniya.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Leolam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher baruch rabanu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torto. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Shimon v'Levi achim elech masmacharoteihem. Sodom tavon nafshi ikalam techad vodi ki v'apam argo ish u'birtzona mikroshor aru rapam ki ahaz v'avarchem ki kashata chalkem v'Yaakov v'yatpitzehem beYisrael.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah temet v'hayei olam natat b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. And now for the third aliyah, it's going to be verses 8 through 12. Clearly, that's not the end of the book, but it's the end of the portion that we are reading this year from the book of Breshit. And so when we get to verse 11, because verse 12 is so short, I will ask everyone to rise by doing the very famous motion of the hand going up. And when Peter is done reading the last words, we will, and I will on your behalf, but everyone can do it, of course, do chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek. And then Peter will repeat that after us. It is indeed fitting and appropriate that we are ending a book as we have just ended a year. We begin a new year. We begin a new book this afternoon, in fact. And so though the beginning of Shmot doesn't open up so great, because Shmot opens up with the beginning of there arose a Pharaoh who knew not Joseph and the whole slavery bit. But then after that, things get quite amazingly wonderful. So that's my metaphor for 2021. I mean, I woke up yesterday morning and it was just a day after 2020. But this year is going to progress and get better and better, God willing. And at least that is our hope. So that is my introduction to the third aliyah. Our third aliyah is it Kathy? No, who is our third aliyah? I do not know.
We do not have one yet.
Kathy Reynolds, would you be our third aliyah?
Coming over here. You can kiss the Torah over here.
Yeah, I mean, you could just be in the same picture, right?
Go around. Oh, no, you're on the right side. This is right. Sorry. Sure, we may do it together here.
Are you both going to do the aliyah? I can set you both up.
You're calling us both. Yes, calling us both up. Yaakov ben Meir Vabatya
Okay, one at a time because I won't remember. Ya'amdu Yaakov ben Merubatia ve
רות בת שמואל זאב וגיטל.
Ruth bat Shmuel Ze'ev v'Gitol la'aliyah ha'shlishit.
Baruch hu et Adonai Amvorach.
Baruch Adonai Amvorach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Amvorach Leolam Vahed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher achar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Yehuda, אתה יודח אחיך ידך בעורף אויביך ישתחוו לך פני אביך גורל יהודה מטרף פני עלית קרא רבת קרייב וכלבים הקימנו לא יסור שבט מיהודה ומחקק מבין רגליו עוד יבוא שילה ולא יכחת עמיקים Osri la gefeni roho la srekabni la atono ki beis liain lvosho v'damanavim sutoho achli li einayim yayin ulevein shinayim mechala.
Chazak chazak v'nitchazek.
Chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen. Yasher koach. Ya'amdu hamagbiya v'hagolelet. Everybody please rise as Peter and Kathy lift and tie the Torah, or however you're going to do it. V'zot haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. Yisrael kudsha berichu ve'yoraita chadu. Yisrael kudsha berichu ve'oraita chadu. Torah, Torah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Torah, Torah, hallelujah. Torah, Torah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Torah, Torah, hallelujah. Yisrael kudsha berichu ve'yoraita chadu. Yisrael kudsha berichu ve'oraita chadu. Okay. All right, we're going to leave it. Do you want to cover it with the talit, or you want, and then when it's time to put it in the aron, we'll put it in the box. All right? Cool. Peter, Yasher Koach, thank you so much for your reading. I now put on gallery view so I can see who else is here. Hi, Rabbi Yarkin. How was Tot Shabbat?
It was delightful, and we had a special guest who led us in a really lovely Shabbat song as well, one Eliana Lewinson, so it's lovely to continue to see your face. So yay, I'm back from Tot Shabbat and happy to co-pilot from here on out with Cantor Aronoff.
So it's time for the Misha Berach. Would you like to take that?
I have the names right here. So I'm glad I got to be here for this moment. Do you want to bookend the Misha Berach in song?
Indeed.
I knew you would. So just while we're getting ready for that, those out there in Facebook land at this time, feel free, if you'd like, to add your names of the people who could do with a Misha Beirach, with a healing, physically, spiritually, emotionally. Feel free to write those in the comments or just hold them in your heart. We'll do a Misha Beirach, and I've been given a list of names to read out as well.
Misha Beirach Avoteinu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah Hu yivarech v'yirapeh et hacholim El Narefana El Narefana La El Narefana El Narefana Lo.
May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bring blessing and healing to Tamar bat Miriam, Ethel bat Hannah, Chaim Shmuel ben Miriam, Shlomo Eliyahu Halevi ben Bluma, Zachariah Reuven Halevi ben Shoshana, Yenta bat Ruchel Hava Devorah, Rachel Leah bat Frael Chaya, Sarah Devorah Bracha bat Zipporah, Rachel Chaya bat Rachel, Uri ben Fishel Ubatya, Julie Gordon, Zissul ben Goldie, Chanuch ben Cecilia, Lois Kaplan, Leah bat Basha, Eliyahu ben Golda, Malka bat Miriam, David Cohen, Rachel Smukler Finkelthal, Saul Halpern, Yitzchak Otto Jagoda, Mordechai Moshe ben Ruth, Dina bat Chaim, Miriam Devorah bat Yehudit, Gerardo Castillo, Joe Dietzman, Sarah Malka bat Rachel, Miriam bat Fisher Mea Ufegala, Elisheva bat Leora, Charles Tarlow Jr., Chaim ben Sion Yitzchak ben Fega, Rita Weber, Yael Sipora bat Chazan Yehudit Dina, Batya Leah bat Herschel U Devorah, Eliezer ben Yitzchak, Necher bat Melech, and all the other names that we are holding in our hearts at this time. May the Holy One mercifully restore them to health and vigor, granting them spiritual and physical well-being, together with all others who are ill. May God also grant strength to those who tend to them. We hope, we pray that healing is at hand. V'noma. Amen.
I'm going to add the name of Leah Elias. I couldn't type because of being busy with my hands, but I'm adding Leah's name. Misha Beirach Avoteinu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah Hu yivarech v'yirapeh et hacholim. So, Yorkin,
yes.
I thought I would do just a few verses of the Haftarah. Do you want to say anything about the Haftarah or?
Oh, I'd love to, because it is a really good one. You know how most of the Haftarahs are kind of waffly, devout prophets yelling at the Israelites to be better. Well, this one is narrative. It is taken from the first book of Kings. It's chapter 2, and it is King David HaMelech, on his deathbed. And he calls his son Solomon, who will be inheriting the throne, and basically gives him his list. Anyone who still remembers Game of Thrones, and Arya, who had her kill list of people who she needed to remove from this world, and would recite this list. We see that important people throughout history have these lists, and King David has a list of both those who he needs to avenge, but also those who he wants King Solomon to reward and treat and protect So this is an incredible Haftorah, and the reason we link it to Vayechi is that it definitely conjures up that similar moment where we have both Jacob and then Joseph on their deathbeds, charging their sons, their children, to keep the faith, to be as good as they can be. And it's basically a deathbed scene whereby the mantle of leadership passes from one generation to the next, and loose ends get tied up. And I know that some of the rabbis are quite uncomfortable with David being quite harsh. And there's one person on his list which intrigues me, and that's the Joab, who is the commander of David's army, who was loyal to a T. But David leans into Solomon and says, he's for the chop. And we're quite uncomfortable with this because does Yoav deserve this? And there has to be a midrash that the rabbis come up with in order to really justify this. And yes, Yoav has a lot of blood on his hands, but not against David. He always used his knife in David's name. But we learn from a midrash that Yoav, who was sent to do the dirty work of disposing of Uriah, of getting Uriah to go to the front so that David would be free to then have relations with Solomon's own mother, Bathsheba, that Uriah is sent to the front via a letter that David has written to Yoav to say, put him in the front. And this midrash describes how Yoav shares this letter with other soldiers and other generals fighting in the war to say, look, it was David who told me to do this because they didn't want this to happen. And again, Uriah gets killed. So that becomes the reason that Yoav loses trust eventually with King David. Again, midrash needed there to ensure that David is indeed correct to dispose of this iffy general. But there you go. It's quite an interesting and bloody Haftorah. So please, Bavakasha Kanta Aronoff. I'm not sure what page number we're on. So if you want to give us a page.
It's page 313, 313. And all of this that Rabbi Yarkin has described happens in this Haftorah of just 12 verses. I'm not going to read all 12 verses. I'm going to read the first 3 and the last 3, just for a just for a taste of the Haftorah. Page 313 in the Eitz Chaim. If you're in another Tanakh, it is the first book of Kings, chapter 2, the very beginning. Vayikrevu yemei David lamud vayitzav et Shlomo beno lemor Anochi holech bederech kol haaretz vechazakta vehayita leish veshamarta et mishmeret Adonai Elohecha lalechet bidrachav lishmor chukotav mitzvotav וממשפטיו וידותיו ככתוב בתורת משה למען תזכיר את כל אשר תעשה ויהיה כל אשר תפנה שם. Verse 10. וישכב דוד עם אבותיו ויקבר בעיר דוד והימים אשר מלך דוד על ישראל 40 שנה בחברון מלך 7 שנים ובירושלים מלך 33 שנים ושלמה ישב על כיסא דוד אביו ותיכון מלכותו מאוד. And I did not do brachot because, as I say, it's just a bissel of the Haftorah. It's not enough to do the brachot in my estimation, but whatever, it's fine. But I really wanted to give this taste. It is a really cool Haftorah. So thank you. Thank you for allowing me to do that. I think, shall we go, unless you have anything else you would like to do, Rabbi Yarkin, before Ashrei? No? Well then, let's do Ashrei, which is page 181. And should we do this out loud?
For sure.
Okay.
I can be your responder if you want.
My responder. Okay. Ashrei yoshvei veitecha od yalelu chasela.
Ashrei ha'am shekacha lo, ashrei ha'am she'Adonai Elohav.
Tehila leDavid, aromim chalo hayamelech, va'avarcha shimcha leolam va'ed.
B'chol yom avarchecha, v'hala shimcha leolam va'ed.
Gadol Adonai umulal me'od, v'ligdulato en cheker.
Dor ledor yeshabach ma'asecha, u'gvurotecha yagidu.
Adar kivododecha, v'divrei niflotecha asicha.
Ve'ezuz norotecha yomeru, u'gdolatcha asaprena.
Zecher av tuvcha yabiu, v'tzitkatcha yiranenu.
Chanun v'rachum Adonai, erech apayim u'gadol chased.
Tov Adonai lakol, v'rachamav al kol ma'asav.
Yoducha Adonai kol ma'asecha, v'chasidecha yevarchucha.
Yevod malchutcha yomeru, ugvuratcha yedaberu.
Lohodia livnei Adam gvurotav, uchvod hadar malchuto.
Malchutcha malchut kol olamim, umemshaltecha b'chol dor v'ador.
Somech Adonai lechol hanoflim, v'zokef lekol ha'kfufim.
Einei cholelecha yisaberu, v'ata noten lahem et ochlam be'ito.
Poteach et yadecha, umaspiach lechol chai ratzon.
Tzadik Adonai b'chol derachav, v'chasid b'chol ma'asav.
Karov Adonai lechol korav, lechol asher yikra'uhu ve'emet.
V'tzon yireav yaseh, v'yet shavatam yishma v'yoshiem.
Shomer Adonai et kol ohavav, ve'et kol harashayim yashmid.
Milat Adonai yedaber pi, v'varech kol batzar shem kodsho leolam va'ed.
Va'anachnu nevorech ya, me'ata v'ad olam, hallelujah. Tag, you're it.
Peter, before we put the Torah away, did you want to tell us something about the piece of art behind you? Are you on? No, you're not. There. Nope. Maybe he doesn't really. Oh, there you go.
Now I'm on. Yes, I can talk about this for a moment. Take a minute. So on one of a number of trips to Israel, we were in the old city. I'm sure many of you participating this morning, of course, have been there as well. But on your visit and perhaps tour of the old city, you went down to the Cardo. And remember this cavernous hallway, and in there's a place where you can look down, way down, and you see one of the original floors of ancient Jerusalem. It's really a spectacular sight. And then along that hallway are a number of art galleries. And one of those art galleries is the Blue and White Gallery, and that might ring a bell with some of you. And so on one of our visits, I expected to see the artist who owns the gallery, but he wasn't there. Instead, there was an older gentleman sitting at the table. He got up, he welcomed us, and as is the custom there often when they're entertaining a guest, and he brought us some wonderful small cups of Turkish coffee, rather dark and deep, boats, perhaps we might say. And so something related to today's Parsha, he introduced himself with the name El Shaddai. And he goes by Eliada, but he said his given name was El Shaddai, and that his family and he was a 7th generation Jerusalem resident. And as I learned, Eliada was a member of the Irgun. And in 1967, after the Six-Day War, he was the first Jew to take up residence in the old city. Now, Eliada's son is the artist, Udi Marios. And I know you can hardly see it, but right here is Udi Marios, who is a nationally renowned artist in Israel. And this absolutely wonderful gallery. We bought this there, hangs in our dining room here on the wall. And I thought it would be a fitting, I couldn't use one of my backgrounds. I was going to be in the DFC this morning, but when I do that, you cannot see the Torah. It was invisible, and I thought that was not a good idea. So I set up here with the piece of art and the history and El Shaddai in the Chumash, which I have over here, at the beginning of this chapter of Vayechi, we hear Jacob telling Joseph that El Shaddai came to him with instructions. And that's, I think, the second time the name El Shaddai is used in the Torah, the first time being when El Shaddai comes to Abraham at the very beginning of Abraham's story. Thank you for letting me share about the artwork.
Thank you, Peter. That's really cool. And Joette just put a comment on Facebook that she has several pieces from Blue and White and lovely interactions with the owner. So there you have it. There you have it. All right. Thank you. We're going to put the Torah away now. So if you'd like to lift it up, we're on page 183 for Yehallelu. Yehallelu et Shem Adonai, ki niskav shemo levado. Hodo al eretz v'shamayim, vayarem keren liyamo, tila lechol chasidav, livnei Yisrael am kirovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. We're going to go straight to Uvnucho Yomar on page 184. So get that Aaron ready. Uvnucho Yomar, Shuv Adonai Rufot Afe Yisrael Kumar. Eitz Chaim hi lama chazikim ba v'tomchea meyushar derachea darchei noam v'chol netivotea shalom. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva. Chadesh, Chadesh Yameinu, Chadesh Yameinu kekedem. Yasher Koach, Peter, thank you. We may all sit down now, and we turn things over to Rabbi Yarkin.
Hello to everyone, and thank you, Peter, for giving us that little art lesson there. What a beautiful idea as well, because we get to beam into one another's homes. I kind of like the idea of every week we get to learn an interesting fact about a painting or something fun on a congregant's wall. So feel free to nominate yourself in the future, many people out there, and let us know something, particularly if it's Israeli art. Then we get to see more about the beloved land of Israel. So just a few words of Torah here, because we are at quite a momentous period of time in our Torah cycle. We're hovering. We are on the cusp of Shemot. And therefore we get to look back, not just at this week's Torah portion, Vayechi, but on the whole of Genesis, of Bereshit, not just the chapters, but the feel, the tone of the book, and that overall moral story, that takeaway that we're meant to get. And here's what I think is going on. There is an anxiety. There's always an anxiety when something new is set up. And in our Jewish story, what's being set up here is a version of God that is more advanced, that is bigger, that is invisible, that is monotheistic, which is the new part of the culture that Abraham first identifies. So we might get a sense even that Adam and the earliest ancestors, are hearing just one deity's voice. But the story of Genesis as a whole is really a story of the Jewish people, and a developing relationship with Adonai. But we see the tension because there's a problem, which is this isn't the modality that ancient peoples were used to. What the ancient individuals and tribes were used to, particularly in that region, were limited, local, specific gods. And we all know this, there would be the god of fertility, the god of rain, the god of luck and fortune. And it wasn't just that your god was in charge of just one thing and you had another god for another thing and another thing for another thing, but your god was local. And what we see throughout the whole of Genesis, and especially in our story this week, is a story of movement and therefore of anxiety that this God that we have discovered and developed a deep loving relationship with in the land of Canaan might not be portable and might not come with us to Egypt. And we see this in last week's Torah portion and this week's. If you remember last week, Jacob is in need of reassurance. God has to promise, I will be with you, Jacob, in Egypt. And we know this. Jacob discovers God as he goes from place to place. He finds that God is in Bethel with him, in that middle place, that God is in Beersheba and Haran. But again, that feels like it might be a local deity. And now that Jacob has had to get to Egypt in order to solve the famine problem and be reunited with his family, it's a different land and it's a different culture with different gods. So the question is, can God travel long distance? And clearly God can. And in this week's Torah portion, we have Joseph saying that same message to his children. God will surely remember you and bring you up out of this land to the land which God swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But the fact that Joseph has to say that, and it's emphatic, God will surely remember you. It's almost a plea, it's a question, will God remember you? And if you remember, when we get to Shemot, we're going to have this issue again. We're going to see, once the children of Israel have been enslaved for hundreds of years, we have that same language, God remembered them. And that's deliberate and almost shocking. Well, of course God remembered them. But that's the anxiety, that's the question we need answered. Does God remember? Can God follow us from land to land? Professor Yara Amit, who is a professor of the Hebrew Bible in Tel Aviv University, I believe still operating, she notices that indeed a lot of the Genesis story is establishing our God as transportable and mobile. And it's a lesson that all of our ancestors learn. God takes Abraham out of Ur Kasdim at the very beginning, and God addresses Abraham in Haran. God's angels reach Sodom, again, a place where they didn't know Adonai. And again, Adonai delivers the people who are worthy to be saved from Sodom. God comes in a dream to Abimelech, the Philistine king of Gerar. God's angel reveals God's self twice to Hagar in the wilderness. So we're establishing God can travel far and wide in city or in desert. And to Jewish people, not that they were called the Jewish people back then, but to the people who had already bonded with this Adonai, and to those who were on the cusp on the outside. And now we're seeing that God's reach can stretch, not only from individual to individual, but as a nation, and is going to be able to dwell in Egypt. So that's actually a very powerful development, that from Abraham, who goes from dip, doop, 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 solo one-man missions, to gathering now 70 people who have gone down to Egypt, we have this expanding circle of faith. And we're learning that God is indeed universal and is able to stay with the Jewish people and isn't tied to the land. And this becomes 100% relevant to Jewish people who are an exilic people. Once the rabbis of the Talmudic times are settling in and continuing the Jewish faith, this is an even more important lesson. God is with us in Babylon. God is with us in France, all over the world. Now it's such a normal understanding of God, of our monotheistic God. But back then it was shocking shocking. It was huge. And throughout Shemot, we are still going to have this problem that the people themselves are going to wrestle with. We're going to encounter the plagues in very, very shortly. And that again is a response. It's our God saying, by the way, I'm not a local single miracle God. I'm not just the God of rain. I'm the God of hail. I'm the God of froggies. I'm the God that can do anything. I'm with you all the way. And the Israelites are still going to forget this lesson again and again and again as they go astray, as they construct their own golden God at one point in our narrative. It's the hardest lesson because, especially when it's invisible, it's very tough to know that when you're remote, you're still connected to your people and to your faith. This might be very relevant to us today because over this past year, we have all been forced to be untethered to our land, to our shul, to Adat Ari, to our normal places of business or education. And for some of us, it's felt very tenuous. Do we still feel as connected as always? Have we been able to make Adat Ariel portable? Have we been able to make our friendships invisible and remote, but yet still deep and real? I know that I've wavered and struggled, and certain relationships that I thought were very important to me, they've gone by the wayside because it turned out I needed land. I needed that coffee shop that I would visit. I needed that regular gym, that establishment to see them. And the people that I don't interact with, they've faded. But I know there are other people as well that I've actually leaned into, that limitlessness, that lack of a boundary has actually allowed me to make more phone calls and hold them in my heart longer. And I find myself praying for more people and making more phone calls to certain people as well. And it's because that relationship had depth and it was real. And I have faith in those people. And again, I find myself just as connected to Adat Ariel as ever before, if not more so, because I get to even, those days when I wouldn't go to Minyan. If it's not my day to daven on a Monday night, I'm not going to show up at Minyan. However, I find myself some Monday evenings tuning in to catch the prayer leader to help make a Minyan. So it means that I'm actually taking my Adat Ariel community with me, even more so. I'm realizing it's not just a local community. And some of us right now are hearing these words in a different place in America, or maybe even the world, because we have successfully learned the stories from Bereshit and Shemot and the whole of the Torah and the whole of the history of our Jewish people, that what's really important to us is what's invisible. It's not just the land, but that we can transport our love, our faith, our connection to one another and to Adonai, and bring it wherever we need it to be. There's a beautiful midrash that helps explain this and uses Jacob as a pawn to make this point. Our Torah portion actually opens with the statement that Yaakov lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. And midrash from the Baal HaTurim tells us, interestingly, that these 17 years were the best years of his life. Yes, you heard that correctly. Egypt, these 17 were the buzziest, funnest years for him. Whereas the other years were ones spent filled with toil and pain. And again, some of this is very Jacob because he had a very tough life. Lots of sibling rivalry, having to flee, being very much manipulated by Lavan, being in fear of Esav for many, many years, struggling and then living with the pain that Joseph had been eaten by wild beasts for years and years. His heart was a broken heart. And yet maybe just in Egypt, he's happy because he's reunited with Joseph. But no, Rabbi Menachem Mendel, a Lubavitcher rabbi, who I don't often quote, said a beautiful little teaching point about why it was really that Jacob was happy in Egypt. And yes, it was that he was able to be reunited with his family, but that what he'd also done was sent Judah ahead of him. And it says in Genesis 46 that Judah goes ahead and shows the way to Goshen. And here, Rabbi Menachem Mendel explains that why Judah goes ahead is that he goes and establishes a house of learning there, where the sons of Jacob would study Torah, because when one studies Torah, one is brought closer to God. And thus, even in Egypt, one can live a wonderful life and find God and find the values really that the Torah permits us to remember, because Torah is portable. And I love that idea that wherever you go, we can establish a community. We can learn words of Torah together. We can still be together even if we're disconnected from that building and from that land. And so as we continue to be in exile physically from one another, we also get to see how can we continue to establish a community that is remote, and to remember that we don't need to be local, that we can be disconnected physically, but connected very spiritually to one another. I feel so many of your hearts and your likes, your compassion and your kindness from distance. We see this like right now on Facebook. There are people going, ha ha, ha ha, reaching out to one another, giving us comfort and bolstering our spirits. And that is the lesson that we take into Shemot, and that the Jewish people then take out of Egypt together. And even though they take so long to get to the land of Israel, where they can physically be together again, they have to learn as a society to be connected to themselves and to God, wherever they may be, even in the wilderness. And I think that right now we're a little bit in the wilderness, but it's not even that I hope and I pray. I know, because I've seen it, because we have done this successfully for the past many, many months. We are able to be in connection with one another because we learned those hard-earned lessons from our ancestors, that our God is a universal God, and that our love for one another is not just dependent on bricks and mortar. So long may this continue, that feeling, but hopefully speedily and in our days, we will be back together physically. So thus endeth my Adat Ari, and let's do some praying yet again so that we can reconnect with our Hebrew words and with the blessings of our ancestors. For the Amidah is next, and we'll be saying Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel and Leah, whose stories have just ended in the Torah. We put them to rest, we bury them, and now we say, make way for Moshe.
Make way for Moshe. Okay. Yasher Kochech, Rabbi Yarkin. Yeah, that's very, very true, all that you say. And I also feel that this connection that we have is so important, this remote, invisible, yet if you're on Zoom, we can actually see you and we can see your comments on Facebook. So that part is visible, thank goodness. But may we continue this until we can, please God, bimheira v'yameinu, as you said, come back together. All right, we're going to continue with the Chatzi Kaddish before the Musaf on 184, and then we'll go right into the Amidah on 185, and you all know what to do from there. So, Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah v'yamad yivrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechono v'yimechonu v'chaydecho beit Yisrael b'galau v'zman kariv v'yimaru amen yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach li'olam u'li'omei omayo yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitramam v'yinaseh v'yitadar v'yitalel v'yitalel shmei dekudesha Brichu le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran bi'alema v'imeru. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elokei avoteinu v'imotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. Ha'el Agadol, Hagibor me'anura, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Akol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot Ve'imahot, U'mevi Goel Ibnei B'neihem, Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava. מלך עוזר ופוקד ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע. משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומתעמלך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. נעריצך ונעתישך כסוד שיח, שרפי קודש המקדישים שמך בקודש, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ויאמר, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ כבודו. כבודו מלא עולם, משרתיו שואלים זה לזה, איה מקום כבודו לעומתם. ברוך יאמרו, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו הוא ייתן ברחמים, ויחונם המייחדים שמו ערב ובוקר בכל יום תמיד. פעמיים באחווה שמע אומרים, שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו, והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו שנית לעיני כל חי. להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ודברי קודשך כתוב לאמור, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהיך ציון, לדור בדור, הללויה. לדור בדור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, תשבחך אלוהינו מפינוי מוש לעולם ועד, כי המלך חדו וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. Sim shalom ba'olam tova uvracha. Let me start that again. Sim shalom ba'olam tova uvracha chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael al kol Yisrael amecha. Barchenu avinu kulanu keyechad kulanu keyechad beor panecha ki beor panecha natata lanu Adonai Eloheinu Torat Chaim v'Ahavat Chesed Utzaka uvracha v'rachamim v'chaim v'shalom Yalai lai lai yanai yalai lai 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 v'tov b'yeinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך Baruch atah Adonai hamevarech et amo Yisrael b'shalom Yikra v'yikra shemei Rabbah b'yom Tev yamlich mochetev v'chayechon v'yimechon v'chayechon beit Yisrael ba'agala v'zman kariv yimeru
Amen. Yehi shemei Rabba mevorach li'olam v'lo me'almaya yitbarach.
Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbarach v'yinaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalel shmei dekudesha
Brichu.
Le'ela min kol berachata v'shirata tishbachata v'nechamata t'amiran b'yama v'yimeru
Amen.
Label tzloton uvalton t'chol Yisrael kodam avohandi v'shmaya v'yimeru
Amen.
Yehi shlomo rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'kol Yisrael v'yimeru
Amen.
Oh, say shalom b'mromav, yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'yimeru.
Amen. Let's continue with Ein Keloheinu on page 204 if you're following along in this beautiful Siddur.
Ein Keloheinu, Ein Kadoneinu, Ein Kemalkeinu, Ein Kamoshienu, Mi Cheloheinu, Mi Chadoneinu, Mi Chemalkeinu, Mi Chamoshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adoneinu, Nodel Malkeinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adoneinu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu. And before we go to Aleinu, I'd like to do the bottom of the page, Lama'an Achai V'Re'ai. It's at the arrow on the bottom of 204. Lema'an Achai. Uh-oh, that was the wrong key. Lema'an Achai V'Re'ai. Lema'an Achai V'Re'ai. Adabrana, Adabrana. Shalom Bach. Lema'an Achai V'Re'ai. Lema'an Achai V'Re'ai. Adabrana, Adabrana, Shalom Bach, Lema'an Beit Adonai Eloheinu, Avak Shatov Lach, Lema'an Beit Adonai Eloheinu, Avak Shatov Lach. Lai 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 And now we can turn to Aleinu. Page
You all
205.
know what to do. We rise if we can for this. Page 205. And thank you so much for singing that. I love Lama and Chai V'Reav. On behalf of my sisters and brothers, we get to be together. Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגור עלינו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויסר הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, ידעת היום והשיבותה, אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא אלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת, אין עוד אלוקים אחד מלבדו. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Please take a seat at this time, unless you are going to be saying the Mourner's Kaddish with us. That's where we are at this point. Page 207, our Kaddish Yatom, and Adat Ari wishes to extend its condolences to the family and friends of Esther Alpert, who was the mother of Ted Alpert. And also, I know there are a bunch of congregants who are in their first 30 days or in their first year of saying the Kaddish for a loved one who has died recently. And we hold you especially dearly in our hearts, wishing that we could physically be together, because that hug, that kiss, that piece of affection is really crucial, so you can feel supported by your loved ones and know that we're here for you. You can call us, let us know if there's a meal that you'd like us to bring you, or you just need to have some consolation or share memories. We are all here for you. And just to those who have also the anniversary today, Yortzeit, the death of a loved one, you are included in this prayer as well. And we will rise together if we can. If not, it's fine. You can still say these words, or at least amen the blessings that we will offer at this time. So, Kaddish Yatom. Yitgadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah, V'yalma, Divrach Kirutei, V'yamlich Malchutei, V'chayechon, U'v'yomechon, U'v'chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael, V'agala, U'v'zman Kariv, V'yimru. Amen. Yehesh Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Leolam Ulolmei Almaya. Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitromam V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shmei Dekudsha Brichu Le'ela Min Kol Birchata V'shirata Tush B'chata V'nechemata Da'amiran V'yalma V'yimru.
Amen.
Yehesh Lama Rabbah Min Shamaya V'chayim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'yimru.
Amen.
Oseh Shalom Bimromav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'yimru. Amen. And that's it, isn't it, really? It's the same message that our love for these individuals, which can no longer be expressed in a physical way to them, is still expressed in a portable way. Can reach beyond just that physical place. So, again, a Shabbat Shalom to everyone. I think we just have a couple of announcements before we will have a glorious Adon Olam. there is going to be another Adat Ariel drive-in movie night on not this coming Sunday, but Sunday the 16th, 17th, that weekend. So there's 3 different movies that will be shown, one at 5, one at 7, one at 9-ish. So depending on your age and your tastes in movies, you'll find one for you. And you can even order some food from Andreas. So check that out after Shabbat on our website. And I'm going to let Cantor Aronoff do the musical announcement because we have a wonderful free concert coming up. Give us some details.
So the free concert coming up is a week from tomorrow on January 10th. It's our annual Engel Chamber Music Concert. All you have to do is go to our website, click on Engel Chamber Music Concert, and you will have free a really top-notch performance by a pianist and flutist. Don't worry that they're performing together. They're married. And it's 3 fantastic compositions that they will be performing that day at 2 o'clock on January 10th. So come to our website at 2 o'clock and enjoy this wonderful concert. Also, one other musical announcement is I have a sing-along once a month song sesh that I do. I believe it's at 4:30 on the first Monday of every month. Cindy is shrugging her shoulders. Last time I messed up. This time I think I'm doing it correctly. So I think it's 4:30, but check the website for that and come and sing along, which means that we visit a little bit and then I sing and you sing in the comfort, kind of like this, you put yourself on mute and you sing, but I've got a song sheet up there and everything. So that's on this coming Monday, day after tomorrow. And then the Engel is on the 10th. And I already saw that drive-in movie theater bit because I'm thinking about which movie I might want to go to for that one. Rabbi Yarkin, yes.
Yes, I also just want to say some thank yous. We had Peter Reynolds do a beautiful, wonderful Torah reading. So Yesha Koach, thank you so much for lending your wonderful skills and Torah reading to us this morning. And a big thank you as well to Samara Lewinson for hosting this Zoom meeting and inviting people to come on and to be the Aliyah blessers. And also a huge Yesha Koach and Toda Rabah to Cantor Aronoff, who did a huge amount of praying, davening, leading, even some rabbiing while I was doing Tot Shabbat as well. So just thank you for carrying us. That was wonderful. And thank you everyone for tuning in, for remotely sending love and support. And there's quite a wonderful Torah discussion right now going on Facebook that my drush provoked about did Isaac, did they know they were being tricked? What was really going on? Jerome and Susan are basically being chevruta together as there's a lovely back and forth. So this is it. Torah discussion thrives even when we're not learning in the same building. So just thank you everyone at Adat Ariel. So if Cantor Aronoff has anything to add, b'vakasha, and if not, I want to tell you that Adon Olam is on page 211.
Just Yasher Kochech to you, Rabbi Yarkin. Who's doing the Kiddush today, you or me?
I don't mind. I've got a cup, but
Whatever, then you may go right ahead after Adon Olam. I did this last night, and it's so nice to Adon Olam that I'm going to do it again. It's that old Scottish folk song that we know and love so much, and recognize, even though it's older than Robert Burns's words from 1788. We know it as Auld Lang Syne, thanks to him. So to the tune of Auld Lang Syne, Adon Olam. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yetzir nivra leit nasa bechefzo kol azay melech shemo nikra ve'yacharei kichlot hakol levado yimloch nora vehu aya vehu hove vehu yeh betifara vehu echad ve'yein sheni le'am shilo lehachpira beli reishi בלי תכלית ולא העוז והמשרה. והוא אלי וחי גואלי וצור חבלי ביצרה. והוא ניסי ומנוס לי מנת כוסי ביום אקרא. בידו אפקיד רוחי בעת אישן ואירה. ואם רוחי גביעתי אדוני לי ולא אירא.
Please be upstanding if you desire. Al Kain Baruch Adonai et Yom HaShabbat v'Kadeshehu Chaverai.
Ayim.
Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Borei Peri Hagafen.
Amen.
Shalom. L'chaim, l'shana tova, l'shavua tov. Here's to a good year, a better year, a year full of kindness and love and connection and vaccinations.
Amen to that. Did we thank Samara?
We did.
Oh, good. Because personal thank you to Samara. Thank you so much. Shabbat Shalom. It's so great to see you all. Hi, Kathy.